Here we go.
Alright, let's go ahead and introduce yourself with name, rank, and unit.
I'm Sergeant Major Scar Team 6 of the 47th Milsim Regiment on Xbox One.
Alright, Sergeant Major, go ahead and tell us about your unit.
Well, our Milsim has been around since Battlefield 3. We actually had our roots in 2nd Cavalry. There was a lot of falling out between some of the members. Our CO, Colonel America Hillbilly, basically separated and formed the 47th Milsim Regiment in Battlefield 4. And when we transitioned to Battlefield 1, we wanted to be a little bit more based in historical context. So we did some research, and it seemed like the only thing that we would have to change was our name. Just a little bit. But we haven't come to a vote on that. So we do actually base ourselves on an actual German Empire regiment. It was a reserve division that fought on both fronts of World War I. We're roughly 40 to 50 members with 15 to 20 people online at any given time. Right now we're just drawing recruits slowly but surely, but hopefully a lot of people can view this or listen to this and might be interested in joining a German Empire Milsim. We try to pride ourselves on marksmanship and training, so that way when it comes time to actually earn our pay, so to speak, we'll be ready.
What draws people over to the German side of World War One? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the German side, the Central Powers lost World War One. Why go with a losing team?
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't the Central Powers that lost. It was the people that were aligned with the Central Powers that lost. The people are the most important aspect of that. And unfortunately, most soldiers who fought in service of the Kaiser were generalized as people who wanted nothing more than to conquest and to destroy. Unfortunately, with people that don't do their history, they've basically lumped everybody who aligns themselves with the Germans in World War One as that. It's a lot more complicated than that. History texts will show that the Central Powers and the Triple Entente, which later became known as the Allied Powers, had been playing a game of political cat and mouse for over a century before the powder keg in Bosnia ever happened. And unfortunately, this wave of patriotism washed over the Central Powers and the Triple Entente, and they got drawn into a war that they didn't understand. It was new technology. They didn't understand how devastating it would be for them in the long run. And the people paid the price for that. Unfortunately, that's just the price of war. People win, people lose. But if you can maintain the spirit of what you fought for, which for the Germans, when they did fight, they fought for the preservation of their Kaiser, their kingdom. They believed that their empire was the correct way to delegate social standards and social needs for the entire world. Germany was one of the first countries to have a labor unions that were standardized. They had universal pay for everybody. They had healthcare system, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a very progressive government. And unfortunately, even with all those progressive things that were going on for the people, the monarchy failed them.
Well, you said the monarchy. Do you mean like Britain and all that kind of stuff?
Well, namely the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs failed the people, unfortunately. But
Yeah, I'm not
There
too big on
is,
German history.
yeah, that I feel like the Habsburgs did fail their people in the end because there were many times where the Germans could have actually surrendered and kept their empire together. And they could have saved some face with that, but because they were so hard-nosed dedicated to fighting to the end, it ultimately spelled their demise. With the historical context out of the way, however, I do believe that the German army was one of the strongest armies in the world, if not the most tenacious. It took four major powers almost 5 years to finally defeat this army.
This is an army we're talking about that fought without using their colonial powers. And granted, yes, Germany is a strong uh, industrial power. Granted, but as soon as we run out of materials to keep that stuff going, whereas over here in the States, it's like constant. Like we can go to the boneyard, tear down a few aircraft or vehicles, and use their metal materials to make new tanks, aircraft, all that kind of shit. But really, America didn't really enter the war until like the last part. I mean, had America entered the war earlier, maybe World War One would have been fought, like would have been ended a little bit earlier. But I don't know. It's all the flip of a coin right there.
Yeah, it kind of is. It's really kind of a 50-50 sort of scenario. I mean, even if the Americans had entered the war in 1914, there was no guarantee that the war would have ended any sooner.
I mean, fuck. It only took us not even 4 years to end World War Two. Like, if you look at it, like, we entered World War Two December 7th, just like hours after Pearl Harbor. And then Germany, of course, declared war on us. And, fucking we declare war. We're in this shit. Like, really, Germany could have declared. Germany could have won. Like, taken over Europe, maybe Britain too, the UK, had Japan not attacked the United States. Because I'm pretty sure, like, Adolf was like, fuck, now we have to deal with these fuckers. Because had Japan not bothered the fuck with the United States in any way, shape, or form, then, like, we would have like, been in isolation and mind our own damn business, trying to establish trade routes and all that kind of shit. But no, fucking 6 aircraft carriers had to attack Pearl Harbor in 2 waves. I mean, Yamamoto was wise enough not to send a 3rd wave, because he knew, regardless if he attacked the oil refinery, the oil storage tanks that we had on Pearl Harbor, we would have fucking destroyed them either way. But that's my whole point. But anyway, we're getting off track here. You still with me?
Yes, sir, I am.
Alright, let's make sure. Fuck, wrong. Alright, what do you? You're a Battlefield 1 unit, right?
Yes, sir.
Alright, let's start with this question. What are your thoughts about the Battlefield 1 Milsim community?
I think the Battlefield 1 community is an interesting group. I mean, we've only just connected to the Milsim community and actually opened ourselves up from an isolationist position less than 3 months ago. And since we've jumped in, we've found ourselves having a hand in a lot of political affairs between different Milsim units. But in prime example, the 123rd, they're our allies, and we have entered in. We entered an agreement pact with them because they're aside from a few other German Milsims, are the only ones who are promoting the same ideals that we want to promote, which is a peaceful sort of environment for all communities to flourish. We want to promote that idea that no matter where you go to in a Milsim community, you're going to be spoken to and you're going to be talked to on an even keel. Unfortunately, there are people out in the Milsim community, small groups of people who find it interest to collude and dissuade and pressure people into doing things they don't want to do, either by force or by coercion, through political means, either line chat or in-game. There was an incident that we had spoken about before we had opened up our doors to outside Milsims. We had come into a heated discussion. The leadership, America Hillbilly, Preacher Man, RXO,
Actually,
and
yeah,
myself.
that name, I'm pretty sure came up earlier. I mean, of course, I was drinking all day, like I said. But America Hillbilly was accused of stolen valor, and I'm not sure what the fuck was going on back then. But apparently, it was something brought up by 7MR. I'll have to talk to Irish about that, see what's going on about that. But as far as I know, it was just a witch hunt.
Yeah, I spoke to him about it, and he actually still had copies of the logs when he was speaking with Irish and 7th MR. And to my investigation, there wasn't really anything he said that could have insinuated that. And unfortunately, like I said, there are people in the community who either deliberately or accidentally or just coincidentally begin pointing fingers for no other reason than to start something. That's not really why we need to be here. We can't be here just to start pointing fingers at people just because. We need to start building ourselves as a community to become recognized outside of our community as a viable resource for gameplay. That's the big idea, right? That's the big scope of things. We need to come together as a community so that when another Battlefield game comes out or another military shooter comes out, the developers, the community of that game, game development company, like, people who are who follow DICE, they would eventually come and take a look at us and see us as a viable resource for innovating gameplay to our standards so that we have a place to play without tweaking things. Just, something like that. We have to be recognized as a valuable community. Years ago, RP servers for Gmod were almost not really existent at first. A lot of it was sandbox building. A lot of it was other gameplay elements like competitive gaming with Melon Ball, I guess is what it was called. But eventually, the role-playing community on Gmod became recognized, and people started making servers for them, and they started making applications and third-party clients for them. I mean, even take a look at Battlefield 2 when there was a very strong Milsim community there. In Battlefield 2, somebody decided to use the assets from Battlefield 2 and they made Project Reality. And Project Reality became Squad, as we know it today. So it's possible for us if we come together and we let our voice be known. Let it be heard across, the entire gaming community that yes, we're here and we're a viable option for people who are looking for this particular sort of gameplay. But we can't do that if we're, clawing at each other's throats trying to gain pole position for what? A title? A self-proclaimed title of I'm the strongest Milsim in the community? There's no point to that. You're basically just standing on top of a molehill saying you're the champion.
Alright. Fucking, I'm terrible. Sorry.
It's all right. I
Fucking
mean
BF1
that's my
press
two
chat,
cents.
BF1 press chat, BF1 community, plus the smoke pit. Besides the smoke pit, just a bunch of Milsim stuff for BF1 lighting up. For those who don't know, who have been tuning into us but haven't been really paying attention, the smoke pit is for veterans and active duty service members only. Reservists may attend the smoke pit, but really it's just a little line chat where a bunch of military folks and veterans and all that shit can get together and drop some nuclear atomic dank memes and no one get triggered.
I find that
Fucking
Abu Hajar meme has fallen out of spice in his favor. I kind of want to bring that back.
okay. The press chat was getting lit, and I told the gents, you're gonna argue and PM, and fucking Crow is like, Roger that, Squilly. It's like nothing like an alcoholic telling you what's up. He messaged me PMs like, I do a half drunk 6-pack and a cigar. I was like, you don't smoke, you liar. He's like, rip. I have fun with these folks. It's some cool people here. But yeah. You're already on BF1, so second part of the question I asked is, what are your thoughts on the BF4 community chat? Not community chat, but BF4 Milsim community.
Well, it's kind of a loaded question. I mean, I have an answer for it. I just don't know if I should be honest about it or should I just, play nice.
Be honest, man. Everyone that does an interview on this stream, we always encourage them to be honest as possible.
Okay. Well, we did have a presence in Battlefield 4 for a while before Battlefield 1 came out. After that, we transitioned completely. We actually have no members from the 47th playing Battlefield 4 anymore. And that's due in part to a lot of the political ramifications between Milsims at that point. There was a falling out between a few members of the Milsim community, of our community, who unfortunately turned our unit into basically just nothing more than poster children. We really couldn't weigh in anything politically through the Milsim community because we were isolationist at the time. So we really detached ourselves from that because we felt that at the time the community was too toxic. There were too many big Milsim communities running around, basically soaking up, smaller groups like a sponge, and we didn't want that for us. So we kind of distanced ourselves as much as possible. Since the departure of these members, we've started to become a little bit more active in the community, and we found that Battlefield 1 at the time when we started our community, we were at the time the only German Milsim when we first started. We started on day 1, and I know a couple of guys probably started day 1, but after about 2 weeks we had about 15 members, and we've been growing slowly since. So what I'm trying to say is, while we did have a community in Battlefield 4, there was too much bullshit mucking up the channels to really get out there and become a prominent member of the community for whatever reason. Most of those reasons are actually personal, and I won't get into detail about that because it's not really necessary so much as it is just kind of, a caveat of information. But to basically make a long story short, it turned into this whole idea where there were two camps in our Milsim community who wanted to either leave or become, an active member of the community. And unfortunately, members left, so we moved on.
Alright. Shit. A fucking crow. This fucking sort of guy is stupid. Fucking crow. It's pretty funny. But before we get off track, um, any problems you see in the community that you wish could be fixed?
A lot of it is just accusations from one Milsim to another, which many may be founded in actual truth, but some of them just seem very childlike. It's very infantile in the way that they point their fingers and say, you did this and you did that. It kind of turns to this whole idea where if I'm in charge of a Milsim, for example, if I felt like somebody was going to insult me personally, I turn it into a matter that involves the entire Milsim because somebody, basically insulted me personally instead of, actually using the Milsim as a means of political discourse and speaking to somebody. I feel like if I was in charge of a Milsim community, if somebody wanted to insult me, I'd let them insult me. That's whatever. They obviously have nothing better to do with their times. However, if you were to start belittling a unit based on nothing more than hearsay and not experiencing what they can do firsthand, you are adding to that toxicity of the community, and it really needs to stop. I think commanders of all Milsims should recognize that they're in a position where they have influence over their members, over other members in their leadership who are aligned with them, and they need to start acting with a little bit more discipline. There's a lot of undisciplined commanders out there, unfortunately. And I've told America, my own CO, this. I've told him, hey, you are being a little bit immature for your position. You need to kind of step up and be a little bit more, honest in your approach to this. You can't just start reacting with knee-jerk responses to things that happen outside of your control. I mean, the only time we've ever fought anybody in anger is when they've come in and attacked us first. We're reactive like that. However, as anybody in the chain of command can understand, you can't have direct control over people in your command chain because, they're people. They're just going to decide what to do whenever. I mean, it'd be nice if everybody talked with each other and explained what they wanted to do and then come to a consensus, which we try to do in our Milsim. But a lot of times it seems like people just sort of go ahead and do things whatever they want to do without any recourse.
Alright. What do you think causes the most problems within the Milsim community?
I think a lot of times it has to do with people abusing their power as commanders or as moderators or administrators in a community setting like line chat or in a Discord server, like between Milsim groups and Milsim alliances between each other. Some people tend to think that because they have that position of authority, they can do whatever they want. It's not like that. The higher you go into a position of authority, the less you're capable of doing without people's consent. If you start making decisions without other people's consent, you start floundering. Your position of power becomes not beneficial to the community, but it becomes a detriment to everybody. You start becoming labeled as a dictator or as a bully, so to speak. So I think in those sorts of settings, people need to redress what's going on in their position. Like I've said before, once you get to a certain position, you have to act a certain way. You have to act with responsibility for your actions, for what you say, because not only do you represent your Milsim, you represent the community as a whole. Because people look in. There are people that look in, who are interested in joining Milsims. We had a couple of recruits the other day speaking to us about what they saw, in the community as a whole, and they didn't like what they saw. And we had a conversation about it, and one of them left and the other one stayed. So, I mean, it is a divisive point of conversation between people who are joining and people who look in. So I think that kind of hurts us.
Alright. What the fuck was the last question I asked? No. What was the last question I asked? Do you remember?
You asked me what I thought was the biggest problem in the Milsim community.
Okay. I see. Is the 47th in any wars or conflicts at the moment?
At the moment, we're not personally into any conflicts, but we monitor what happens with the 123rd and some of our German allies. And we've been honoring an agreement that if they need our help, they ask us, and we come to their aid. But personally, between us and them, the last time we had anything was with the 1st Infantry Division, which was basically a shit show for them. But that's only because it was out of spite that the 1st ID even dared attempt to attack us. So I don't really consider that much of a conflict because it was just kind of a reactionary thing that the guy did. So other than that, no, we're not really involved in any conflicts or disagreements with anybody. Not that, at least for the moment, we're not.
Alright. In your honest opinion, who do you think makes the most trouble in the Milsim community?
I think everybody contributes a little bit to that sort of troublemaking aspect. But let's go back here and I'll take a look. So right now it looks like a couple of things going on in the community, but it really just comes down on the entire community as a whole. Because even if it's the 17th or the 123rd, with whatever beef they've got going right now, which is kind of like a big thing right now because everybody's watching that. Which, I mean, the details between that are, I still need to get the whole story of it because I'm only reading one half of the story at this point. And I usually wait until I get the entire story before I make my opinion about something like that. But like I said, when it comes to who's the biggest troublemakers, I think everybody's responsible for that. If not for one thing, then another.
Alright. What do you wish to see changed in the Milsim community?
I'd like to see unit leadership become a little bit more universal in terms of rank structure, command and NCO structure, because even between different German units, command structures are a little bit different. So I think we really need to work as a community to establish guidelines as to how the chain of command works and how communication should be traveled up and down those channels. On top of that, I do believe training for certain, for certain factions on Battlefield 1 do need to be universalized. Um, Recently, we just had this new weapons list come out, so we've been starting to use those weapons in accordance to what needs to be done. So I think the 47th, the 123rd, and a few other German Milsims have been starting to adopt a few similar training methods. I mean, we learned some things from the 123rd when we trained with them. They learned some things when they trained with us. But I think as a whole, we all need to get together and start working to standardize training. But I think to take it to an extreme would be a bad idea. I think every unit should have its own personal flair on it. But I guess what I'm trying to say is there needs to be a little bit more standardization between factions and how they work with each other and with other Milsim units in the community.
Alright, well, that's all the questions I got for you, man.
Awesome.
Again,
I'll
I'd like
get.
to thank you for taking time to join us on the stream. Second stream
Thank you for having me
tonight.
on. Thank you for having me on such short notice. I really appreciate it. I really hope that anybody that's listening that's not in a Milsim community and is interested in looking, please give us a look. I really would like to ask that anybody that is interested, just take a look. Look around our Milsim unit. Look around the other Milsim units. Join the community. Be part of this growing community. I mean, we can't exist without people like you who are interested in doing a little bit more historically based,
Oh shit.
operations.
Alright. Alright, well, this is the conclusion of the 47th Milsim Regiment. Thank you all for tuning in, and again, thank you to the Sergeant Major for taking time.
Thank you. Got me, Dons.